Welcome, everyone. We have a special guest here today, Mr. Kurt Peterson, friend of the show. We've had him on before with many different things. He's been a presenter at our Ignite Agility. He's been a longtime friend of the company. And why don't, Kurt, tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Gosh, okay, I'd be happy to. I live in Calgary. I'm a native Texan. I live in what's considered the Texas of Canada, which is the Alberta province. And I've been in software engineering, software development, coaching, management, consulting for about 20-ish years now. And I love learning. I love teaching. I think Agile still has a place in many companies, maybe under a different name, a different intent. But yeah, I've been spending a lot of the last 4 years teaching online, as many coaches and trainers have. Learned a lot, and excited to support your community, Rand, with some cool classes and exercises that'll hopefully help them advance their practices.
Nice. And
Yeah.
you've already got you stepped into the first part of what we're going to talk about is agile is kind of a very encompassing word. And the classes that you're going to start teaching for us are Kanban. Tell us a little bit about that. Is that the same thing? Is it different?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. David Anderson, codified or sort of formalized taking a lot of the fundamentals of lean manufacturing arising from the Toyota production system, and then moved into corporate America in the 80s and 90s, and he really codified those for software development and software support in 2004. And he's widely published, and he's sort of considered the person that brought Kanban into light for many of us, including myself. So his work came about at the same time that the Agile Manifesto authors were recognizing the importance of customer involvement and value and right sizing the work and getting feedback happening in the cycle. So there's a lot of parallels between Kanban and Scrum. I call them siblings and often call them sibling rivals. They don't always love each other, but they came from the same DNA.
Nice. I say
Yeah.
very similar things.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, the relationship is improving. I've heard stories of fistfights breaking out at early Scrum conventions when people started to talk about Kanban. So hopefully we
Mhm.
move past all that.
Yes, I hope.
Yep. So you're going to have a couple of different offerings coming up. One of those is, and correct me if I get the title wrong, how to get started in Kanban. Is that the
Yeah,
title?
that is the title indeed.
Okay, tell us about that one.
So, the beauty of Kanban, the Kanban method, that I've discovered since being introduced to it over 9 years ago, is the simplicity and elegance of it. Coming in the door with Kanban, you're not trying to necessarily change anything out of the gate. You're trying to understand things initially. How does our work move? What slows it down? What makes me unhappy as a team member? Where am I dissatisfied as a customer or stakeholder? So we kind of start to look at the bigger picture, look at the system, and uncover those motivations for change, which is really central to the Kanban method, which is start with what you do now, look at what's not working or what's failing in instances, and then have the courage to come together as a group and make a commitment to a small incremental change that'll move you in a positive direction. So how do you do that? How do you come in the door and start to, view, consider, visualize, apply the practices of Kanban to get started? And so that's what we're going to cover in the micro course. We're going to look at, ways to create safety in an environment that may be, fraught with some challenges. We're going to look at ways to visualize work. Doesn't always end up being a board. There's a lot of ways to visualize, and then just hopefully provoking that curiosity that each of us has as humans to improve the way we work and to better our lives and the lives of our customers.
Nice, outstanding. And so it's a literal how to get started. What do you do first? What do you do next? And all that. Excellent. And then you're going to have two more classes later in the year. And these go from the 2 hours that you just mentioned, and these are going to be 2 days.
Mhm.
What's that about? What is this, a deep dive, or tell us a little bit about the next two Kanban classes?
Yeah, it's actually sort of two deep dives, if you want to think about it that way. They're bookends, or they're two chapters in a comprehensive book. And the credential that results from these two classes is called the Kanban Management Professional. The first class is called the Kanban System Design Workshop, and that's about bringing Kanban in the door. We'll be touching on some aspects of that in the micro course, but it's really about how do you introduce Kanban to your team? How do you begin to help them understand how their system is operating? How do you help them design a board that reflects how they work today, and then have some interest in evolving, their work process? So that's the first step. Once that's sort of covered, we often like to invite teams to go off and practice some of what they've learned for 2, 3, 4 months. And what they often realize is that there's a whole world outside of the team that's responsible for how well the team performs and executes. And that's when we bring the class in called the Kanban Systems Improvement. And the system has an S on the end because we broaden our lens, we zoom out, and we consider not only our own team, but other teams.
Mhm.
We might think of organizations as interdependent networks of services or service teams. And so we start to look at how we might optimize the flow of work, the flow of value across that network.
Nice. Yeah. And so the idea there is, first we design a system, get it kind of running and yielding information, and then take that information and say, okay, now as we go outside, what does that look like? So this is what some people would refer to as scaling or whatnot. Yeah. Nice. Anything people need to know about either of these two offerings? Things they need to get familiar with ahead of time, or tell us all about that.
I would just say come in with a blank canvas as much as possible. That Zen saying, beginner's mind, and the sage is pouring tea into the cup and it begins overflowing, and the student's like, well, why are you doing that? Well, there's no room in the cup for anything new. So I'd say come in with an empty cup. I certainly came to Kanban from the world of initially project management and then Scrum. So I had a very, kind of conventional paradigm in how things needed to work. And what took years for me to kind of begin to get a feel for and understand was this idea of flow. Seeing work as flow, understanding the flow of value, the flow of information, and letting things be a little bit less rigid. You know, Kanban doesn't prescribe time boxes. It does have, events and cadences that provide feedback loops, but we really work to be present with our stakeholders, customers, and learn as we go. So I would say when you come in the door, be willing to kind of erase what you know, or to the degrees possible, let it go, and be willing to step into, playing with some new ideas.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
And would that be kind of the why of the micro course, just to kind of let people dip their toe into these ideas and see kind of how ready for them they are, if that makes sense, or is it?
Well, the idea is to give them a taste for things, but even beyond that, if they can take a few nuggets, a few practices, and bring them back to their teams, their clients, their customers the next day, that would be an ideal. And Rand, this is something you shared with me years ago when you started working with a client, and they had a challenge. I don't remember the exact specifics here, but it sounded like a client working across multiple time zones,
Mm-hmm.
and you found a way to help them collaborate and get cohesive. And it came from a series of really basic, small, simple steps that kind of built on each other.
Right.
So my hope is that people can take away some really basic steps, they can apply them, and then either run with those gains, have a great time, and then come back to collaborative leadership team for more consulting and training, or have someone in to coach, or come back to the KSD or the KSI or some other class that'll help deepen your understanding.
Yeah. And to that, I guess that my micro course that's coming up is personal Kanban. So when you've been talking about it, you've been talking about team or organization. Well, there isn't a way to do this. Excuse me, there is a way to do that. I'll edit that out.
Yeah.
Um, you could do this for yourself. So let's say that you don't have an organization or don't have a company that is open to the idea yet. You can practice this on your own. In fact, this is great for families, it's great for civic groups, book clubs, things like that. And so my micro course that's coming up is just that. How would you do this just for yourself? And it's based on Jim Benson's book of the same name, Personal Kanban. And the idea is kind of what you were saying. How do you start to break some of the ways that we look at work into differences, right? It's not just completely throw the baby out with the bathwater or anything like that. But it isn't different enough that you start to see where this is going versus how we've looked at work traditionally, right? Which is that second cousin to Agile, like you were talking about before. Thanks. Anything else that you want to say before we wrap up, or?
I think we're all faced with some unique challenges right now. I think we're being asked to do more as individuals and teams for our companies with less time and often, with just less team members. And that challenge, along with, sort of a lot of capital being deployed in the area of artificial intelligence and a lot of, political and economic unrest and churn is what we're up against. And I think Kanban is really a place. It's an approach that helps us to get connected to the data, the empirical aspects of what we're doing. And to me, I'll just be honest with you. I'm a thinker. I'm an analytical guy. I love problem solving. And when I look at the data, it's a settling, process to understand how work is flowing and what I can do that's in my control. Because let's face it, many of us that we're drawn to software we're drawn because of the myth of control, the idea of being in charge of something. Ones and zeros are much easier to manage than people and their emotions. So I would say Kanban has a lot of qualities that really are a fit for this day and age.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as always, Kurt, appreciate your time. Now, when is the micro course coming up?
The micro course is looks like on the Friday the 28th of March, and it runs from I think it's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Friday the 28th.
10 p.m. to 2. And tickets are available at the link that'll be down below. So hopefully you can join us. Kurt will be talking about Kanban, and then later on, as he mentioned, kind of talk about the bigger system stuff with the two KSD and KSI classes. So thanks, Kurt. We'll see you again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Rand. See ya.